Hey, welcome to 24/7 Marriage Podcast. I am Javier,
And I'm Shannon.
and Happy New Year to you. Happy 2025. I know we've already done a episode that released this year, and I don't know which one this one is.
January 14th.
Sure. So, have no idea.
What?
Talk.
About what? What do you want to talk about? How about you were sick for like 3 weeks and you missed Christmas?
I was, yeah. I actually miss Christmas because I got sick for Christmas, and I missed Christmas with our grandson for the first time, or for his first Christmas, which I know he's not going to remember. But yeah, that was a little bit of a bummer. So missed Christmas, and then actually, yeah, I was trying to fight this for quite a while, which is not normal for me. And so, yeah, feeling better. Still have a cough, so if I cough on here, I apologize, but still working through it.
Yeah. How come being sick makes you angry?
I wasn't angry.
You were a little upset.
I was frustrated that okay, so you be sick for almost 2 weeks and see if it doesn't make you frustrated.
Frustrated,
Because you can't get
yes.
things done. You don't feel yourself. And also it's in the middle of the holidays, and our oldest daughter and her boyfriend came into town, and we were all together as a family, and I'm not feeling well to do
Okay.
stuff, to hang
So
out, to
let
be
me
present. I didn't hold my grandson for almost 2 weeks.
Okay, but let me tell everybody
So
who's
yes, it
listening.
was frustrating.
Javier also decided that he would hit the pickleball courts with the two boys. One
That was on New Year's Day.
No, they left on New Year's Day. It was New Year's Eve. And you decided that you wanted to beat both the boys at pickleball. And I think it put an extra strain on your body and your recovery and your cough.
Oh, it did, 100%. But who won? Who won?
Javier.
Who beat those kids that are half my age? Me, multiple times.
Less
So
than
there.
half your age.
Less than half. My one was less than half. Yeah, they are actually less than half my age. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So who won? Yes, I paid the consequences for that.
Okay, so when this
And
podcast comes out, you'll be 15 days away from your 52nd birthday. Whoa.
reverse that, my 25th birthday.
What does it feel like to say 52? I know it's just a number, but for me, it's been hard wrapping my head around it that I'm married to such an old man. But I'm going to be okay.
I don't even have anything to say to that. So it doesn't feel like anything.
It doesn't?
I probably, when I'm 55, it'll feel older.
What about
But
when you turn 60?
then I'm just hanging up my hat and I'm done. Just take me out to pasture. Put me to rest.
At 60? Wow.
60, I'm just beginning. That's the new 50 since I'm living to 100.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't want to live to 100. That would be absolutely exhausting. That would be exhausting. At that point, just send me out with the cows, and when my back is turned, just put me out.
Well, I'll have to find some cows.
Yeah.
But
So I don't know. Could you imagine?
Imagine what?
Well, I'm 50 now. That would be in like what, 48 more years.
Mm-hmm.
That means you and I would be
How long will you be married?
like 79 years.
Wow.
79 years. I don't.
If your age doesn't kill you, this marriage will.
100%, you will. If this morning's an indication of anything, yeah, you will.
Nothing happened this
No,
morning.
nothing happened this
Avert your
morning.
eyes. Avert your eyes. Nothing happened.
So even if I live to 90, that
Okay,
means
I'll
I'd be
talk about it.
married 70 years. Could you imagine? 70 years. Like the joy you have of being married to me for 70 years. That's pretty incredible.
Do you want to talk about this morning?
No, we don't need to talk about this morning.
Oh. I had a meltdown. I just get tired of I shouldn't complain. I have the hands and the somewhat willing eyes to do the things I need to get done. But I never saw myself as a producer of anything, content creator. I do like planning and the organizational part of like what a boot camp looks like. Like I'm very much into the ethos of like it has to feel this way when they walk in. There should be music playing. There should be this kind of food. We should make like I want every couple to feel so loved and welcomed. So I love putting my thought and energy into that. But this whole
What
podcasting
she's saying is that
thing,
we work with a very
is
slim team, and
it called a skeleton crew?
and so just as a nonprofit, I don't know. Maybe there's someone out there who's an incredible podcast producer and editor and wants to give their time
And wants to do this for free.
until they can get paid. That's what we're moving towards with the pod. As you notice, we don't have. Um, we're actually going to start doing that more. We don't have, advertising or sponsors. We'll probably have sponsors on this podcast. Not too much advertising because advertisements suck. I don't like listening to them. I don't like
Well,
having to skip through them on the podcast. I do not like it. But
well,
I
basically you just
recognize.
squelched all advertising deals for us now.
No, I didn't say I wouldn't. That I wouldn't, but it has to be things that are going to help people improve
Well,
themselves or their
yes.
life. Like I'm not selling. No, we're not having people sponsor just some widget, some gadget that's just for consumerism. I'm not for that.
Okay.
It needs to help people
Okay.
in a way.
So I guess we just sponsor our own podcast. It's some weird
I
way.
listen to the minimalist podcast, and they always say because advertisements suck.
Wait, do they have advertisers?
No,
Oh,
zero. They have
okay.
Patreons, people who support the podcast and help monetize it. No sponsors whatsoever. Um, all just supported by people who are listening. Which we thought about doing that as well, having Patreon and yeah. So it's a lot. So yeah, maybe you're listening to this and you're an incredible podcast producer or have those gifts and talents. You never know. You never know.
Never know.
And but hey, listen, you could give your time, you can volunteer, and support the work of 24/7 Marriage.
Yeah.
Right? It's an
Well,
awesome thing.
it's the beginning of the year and
Oh, are you transitioning? Are you done with the banter, Shannon?
yeah, I'm moving on. Segmenting away from our banter. It's the beginning of the year, and we came out with an incredible exclusive download um, for married couples called the 24/7 Yearly Marriage Planner. It's a 24-page planner that we created exclusively for couples to do at the beginning of a year.
Why did you
And
create that, Shannon?
um, because I have seen so much fruit come out of the intentionality that we've taken over the last 30 years. Definitely, this didn't happen maybe the first 5 to 7 years of our marriage. But after that, we've always taken this chunk of time to really like look at the year ahead of us. Now, our planning for 2025 happened in September in Colorado. So
Dead.
it did.
Yes.
I know. I
Why are you
didn't
talking with your hand like
I
that?
don't know.
If you're
You know,
watching this, Shannon's like pointing her hand down and doing like a little
I was just like a
downward wave.
gesture.
Okay.
Javier, when you teach, you go like this all the time, when you're like talking about
I use my
legacy and
hands.
marriage and your
Okay.
generational impact, and you do this little twist. So I was just like, we
So
had our
we're
planning meeting
yeah.
in September of last year, and that was a great time for us to kind of lay out everything personally and then with the ministry. So we laid out all the boot camps, potential workshops with churches, all of our personal dates, the time that we take off. Our grandson will turn 1 years old in July.
Sweet
So we knew
Moses.
that we would have to be back in Prescott for that. And
So
so
the reason why this planner so here's what we want to talk about today. It's not just about talking about this planner. Like we want you to get it. We'll tell you at the end how to go and get this planner. I think it's the importance of we talked a little bit. I think in the previous podcast about just the new year and how you look at it and how you're planning. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that also in our next podcast about what you learned in 2024 in regards to your marriage, the lessons that you learned, the things that
I'll
maybe you
tell you
had,
what I learned.
maybe the things you had decided to work on and maybe haven't completed working on those things or
Yeah.
committed to. So we're going to talk about that. It's important to understand where we've come from to help prepare us for where we're going. And maybe some of you have missed it. Maybe some of you didn't accomplish some of the things you wanted to accomplish. That's okay. Maybe 2024 was a difficult year for you in your marriage, and you want to see that shift and change, and it can. But what things maybe did you put in the that you said you were going to do, and you never did them?
Mm,
What lessons did you learn about? Oh, I did that quite a bit, and I need to change that
yeah.
and not continue in those patterns or behaviors. But uh, but part of today is really just encouraging you, like, if it's that whole that quote, right? If you fail to plan, you
Plan
plan
to
to fail.
fail.
And there is truth to that, because you are in if you're not intentional about looking ahead, and we're talking about your marriage right now, about what that looks like, the areas you're going to work on individually and together, the questions you're going to ask one another, the habits that you're going to form, the shifts and changes that you're going to have to make. You got to be intentional about those things as you move forward.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you do get to the end of the year or mid-year, and you turn around and like, oh my gosh, like how did we get here? Like
Yeah.
like we didn't make the progress we needed to make. And I can be guilty of that because I've got ADD, and it can get really bad, and it's gotten bad as I got older.
Yeah.
And if
True
I do
story.
not, and I have not been good in the last number of years of my planning, of being really focused. I've been all over and scattered, and because we don't have consistency, oftentimes in our life of being in one place, this year and probably like the end of last year, we were a little bit longer in places. But it's the moving and then the events and the constant. There's just a constant of where there's not a consistency, and that's not always easy for me.
Yeah.
So the planning part is important, but like, man, if most of you will spend more time this year planning your vacation, or planning the getaways you want to go on, or things you want to do, or what you'll plan about, how can I save enough money to get this that I want, or that car, or whatever it may be. You'll spend more time in that area than you will spend planning and preparing for a thriving marriage in 2025.
And we're not saying that vacations can't be a part of your planning, because they
No.
are. So this 24-page planner um has many layers to it. So we're this isn't just something you sit down and do after dinner and the kids go to bed. We're asking you to take this planner and set time aside, whether you get a babysitter for the day, whether you book a hotel and you take a bunch of blank paper and print out this workbook and you plan out what 2025 looks like. We want you to be intentional about
Yeah.
your vacations and
Yeah.
your trips, but we want you to be intentional about the time
Yeah.
you spend together. It's like, okay, if we want to have a date night every other week or at least once a month, let's put it on the calendar now. That way, who's ever in charge of like the sitters or where we're going to go or what we're going to do, they already know it's on the calendar. There's already this agreement and this alignment.
Yeah.
And when there's alignment in your marriage, health flows out of that. Intimacy flows out of that, because we already know, hey, in next weekend we have date night. Like, we're going out, and this is what I want to do. I want to go eat at a Tap on Grill, and I want to go bowling, or whatever it is. So it's this already coming together and unifying over 2025. But it's also looking at it and saying, God, what do you have for us and our family? How can we like dedicate 2025 to you? How can we glorify God through what we do this year?
Yeah, and that's an important part. And like, I spend personally the first portion of this new year, for me, prayer and fasting. Fasting being a spiritual discipline. and everybody has different ways of how they do it. So we're not going to get into that, but that's part of also being able to like, God, what do you have for us in this year? And is there a direction, a theme, or a word for us? And maybe in your marriage, I don't know, maybe it's going to be it's restoration, maybe it is renewal, maybe it is that we need to remain set in our
Rebuild.
pursuit of God, or it's rebuild. We're
Yeah.
doing all our words for some reason. Maybe it's surrender, whatever it may be. Maybe it's a couple words, get out of the way, right? Like whatever, let it go, whatever it may be. It's just recognizing that you 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 have been something that you're moving towards, and that you are in agreement that we're building towards this, or this is kind of like, man, last year we didn't hit on these things, but this year needs to be a year where we're surrendering things and we're letting them go in order to see these things take place in our marriage. So, when you download this, you're going to have, some things you can fill in and activities, and give you some direction. It's going to have some great questions
We
as
encourage
well.
you to print it out. Like, go to
Yeah.
Kinko's or plug in your printer and print it out, and use this as your guideline
Yeah.
to creating what
and
you want
and there's great
2025 to
questions in
look
there
at.
about like what habits or routines can you establish to improve your communication and connection. What does a successful year for our family or our marriage look like? What new experiences or adventures would you like to share together in this coming year? How can you become more involved, right, in your church or community? What are the areas also that you personally are going to be committing to work on? You're going to share that with your spouse. These are areas where I know I haven't shown up in my marriage. And some of those questions to ask yourself is like, where have I done well in the past and I've let that now slide, and I
Mm.
need to get back to doing that? Where was I maybe intentional and I'm not doing that now, and I need to be better at pursuit and being intentional in my time, and being available, whatever it may be. So the thing is, like, this will help you in that, but we want to just touch on the overarching, um again, purpose, and encourage you, as you begin, take a pause this year and look at, where do you want to go? So that means that oftentimes in our life, and I guess again in your marriage, you have to start with the end in mind. So what does that look like? What's the ethos of your home? What do you want it to feel like when you walk in? What are the things that you're going to be working on, and that's who you're becoming? And I think that's an important part to talk about, is that you can also be frustrated at the end because you didn't accomplish everything you wanted to, and that's okay. I always talk about, if you're going to make some goals, make them with wings. So goals with wings, and wing. And the reason that kind of is a hard word for me to say, wings. Does this
Why?
come out right? 'Cause I feel like I'm saying it wrong. Wings. You say it.
Wings.
Wings. All right. Make goals with wings.
You're so weird.
So, what does that mean? That they
That they can
can
carry into the other
they
year?
can
Oh,
move.
yeah.
Like, we can get so frustrated. Like, I wanted to accomplish this. We wanted to be at this place in our marriage. We wanted to be doing better with our date nights, but then we had another baby, or this health thing came up, whatever it may be, and you can grow frustrated with that, as opposed to saying, you know what? Okay, we're gonna have to readjust. We're gonna have to move that. We're gonna get there to getting to one date during the week.
Yes.
Right now, we do every other week. Okay, goals with wings gives you permission to be able to move them, and adjust, because of just life happens and things take place. But also, I want you, as you're looking at this next year in your marriage, is make statements like, what are you becoming? I'm becoming an intentional individual in my marriage, who pursues my spouse, who's investing into her emotionally, who is communicating well. Like, I'm becoming that person. And then there's a lot of grace, because it doesn't mean you're going to be there in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, or in 3 months. It means you're becoming that person. So when you don't do well that week about being emotionally available, you can have grace for yourself, because you are
Well, but
becoming.
you can also have grace for your spouse,
Yeah, exactly.
and not lord or hold that over them. Like,
Yeah,
we said this was going to be a goal,
yeah,
and you failed it in the
yeah.
first
Or
week.
you said you're going to communicate better and you're not
Yeah,
doing it. Like,
your guys are going to mess up. You're
there's
human.
grace.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of a principle, or a concept from a book, Atomic Habits, where he talks about, you can say, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. Maybe some of you said that already here in January, beginning of the year. Most people have already broken their gym commitments and everything, by the first week, honestly, because it's not an issue of going to the gym. It's an issue of discipline.
Discipline.
It's an issue of
Yeah.
actually putting it into practice and
Yeah.
building the habit. Anyways, so where was I going with that?
I don't know.
Oh, is that
Having
you
grace
can
for one
say, "Oh, I
another.
want to lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks," and then you get to the end of the 2 weeks and you're frustrated because you didn't lose the 10 pounds. And but the thing is, if you tell, I'm gonna become a person who eats healthy and makes good choices with food and who exercises every day, then the result of that is you're gonna probably lose 10 pounds, and it might take 4 weeks and not 2, but you're becoming that person. You're creating more of an identity-based outcome as opposed to or
Yes.
goal as opposed to an outcome-based goal.
Yeah. I also want to emphasize with the daily planner that this daily planner, marriage yearly planner is not geared towards one demographic or another or class or another. This is for every married couple. So I
Mhm.
understand that some couples live very much paycheck to paycheck, and some have a lot of extra wiggle room. What we want you to do is be intentional with your calendar year and your marriage and your family. So just because one family goes to Jamaica for 2 weeks every year, but that's not in your budget, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't schedule time together. If your job allows you to, if you can have a staycation. Listen, there were so many years early on when our girls were little where things were slim. We did not have the extra income, and we did staycations where we stayed home, but we did a lot of fun things, and we were intentional about how we enjoyed our time in the same town and doing things. So I want you guys to not be limited by finances. Do not let that limit you. This is an opportunity for you to be creative, to be intentional, to be thoughtful, to think outside of the box, and don't compare yourself to what everybody else is doing. Plan your year for you and look ahead at how, even if they're date nights, like we can't afford to go out to eat. Well, if you have small children, you can put them to bed and you can cook dinner for you and your spouse. You can find ways to have intentional time,
Yeah,
even if it means staying at home.
yeah,
So I want you guys to be creative and don't be limited by what you think you can or can't do with this yearly planner.
yeah. So, again, at the end, she'll tell you how to download that, how to get that yearly planner. But what we're asking you, and really the focus of this podcast is, will you take a pause? And the next podcast, we're going to talk a little bit more about this, and take a look at your year, take a look at your marriage and where you're at as well. I get that it's just a flip of the page of the calendar, but it's more than that when you think about we have the opportunity to be able in this year to make some significant progress and change and bring some renewal, refreshing,
Mhm.
restoration into our marriage. And so I think it's going to be a miss if you don't pause and take time to actually work on these areas and do the work that is necessary to prepare. And so that way, at the end of the year, you can look back and say, man, that was an incredible year. It wasn't easy in every respect because there's things that took place that we didn't know. There's things that happened that we had no idea would happen, um, things that we encountered. But you're working on your foundation. You're making sure you're continuing to build strong.
Yeah.
And then in the middle, when things come up this year and you're struggling, you might have to course correct. You may have to be like, okay, we gotta shift this right now. This is gonna look a little bit different. We're gonna have to still we want to accomplish that, but it's gonna look this way.
Mhm. Also, I think by doing this together, you will actually look forward to the end of the year in 2026 and you'll be like, okay, we're we're actually gonna put money aside so we can go get a hotel room and we're gonna plan out 2026. You'll look forward to planning again. The other great thing that planning the year for us, what's good, is that um, we already know the things that we're gonna say no to this year, or that we've already said no
Everything
to.
and everyone.
Stop. We already know that. It's like, oh, we have that on the calendar. So people ask us this or we get asked this, I already know that we're in agreement. We're like, oh no, we can't do that because we already have this commitment, or we've blocked out this time for us. That's a time of for us to recover and regroup and maybe work on content or whatever. Um, which for a lot of couples, it's a sore subject. Um, we've talked about it a lot on reels and different things where it's like if I get asked to an event or to a party or get invited to something, I always say, I'll get back to you. Let me run it by Javi. Let me see if there's anything on the calendar I forgot about. And some people have issues with that. It's like that's just a sign of respect. Like I am always going to run things by you. I'm always going to consult you and check to make sure, is this okay? We're good to move forward so that we're always in agreement. It's when people make plans and they start saying yes to things and overcommitting their spouse, and then your spouse is angry and they're passive aggressive because they have to show up to this thing they didn't want to go to, they didn't want to be a part of because you
Yeah.
just answered yes for both of you.
Yeah.
These are these pitfalls you guys can stay out of by having this planning meeting with your spouse. So set a date to plan out 2025. It's so important.
Yeah. So I think we're going to leave it at that. Again, it's because we're going to go into the next podcast for that will be released after this one, and really talking about just what are the lessons learned, and share with you what we've learned, and but also it's a little bit different, right, than the planning. This is going to be more of a focus of okay, this worked last year. Like we were spending a lot of time together. We were having our date nights. That needs to continue. So we're going to make sure we do that, and we're going to write that down, whatever it is. So we'll unpack that some more. So Shannon's going to tell you how do you get the planner, and we'd love to hear your stories. Maybe you taking photos of you
I would love
planning,
that.
um, sending a video, whatever it is that we can
Yeah.
put on social media. We'd love to hear your stories of how it worked, what's going on. And again, uh, listen, you do not arrive to a marriage that is healthy, strong, that's thriving. I'm not saying that doesn't have any issues or problems. It's not perfect, but you don't arrive to that place um, by accident.
Yeah.
There has to be intentionality, and you can't complain about what you permit. So if the year's getting away from you and you're like, oh, got kids, we got this, like tell your time where to go. And this is part of that. This is about you telling your marriage where to go and the things you're going to do and commit to and the plans that you're making so that you guys have an agreement as you move forward. And so
Yeah.
take the time and do
So,
it.
real quick, just to put a bow on that or the cherry on top of that Sunday, is I got a question on Instagram. Is this planner good for investors?
Well,
One, two,
yeah,
three. Yes. Yes.
or
Yes.
anybody.
Yes. Yes. Javi and I are empty nesters, and we still are intentional about date nights, quality time, time we spend
We could
alone.
do better with date night, Shannon. It's because kind of our date nights sometimes are like, oh, we're gonna sit here and do a puzzle together. We that old.
But I like that.
We can do better though.
Always. So as long as you're saying that you've messed up and you need to do better, then yes,
Yes.
I'm in agreement with that.
All right.
Okay, we're gonna go now. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you how. In the show notes, there's a link to get this calendar. It's on sale right now. It is such a great deal. 24 pages. We highly, highly, highly encourage you to print it and get it in a binder, put it in a notebook, staple it, I don't care, but print it out, put time aside with your spouse, and get to work on 2025. You can also go to Instagram or any of our social medias, and you'll see plenty of links for it there. But you can go to 247marriage.org and you'll see it up
Yeah.
on the bar on the very top.
And remember, we are a partner supported ministry and nonprofit. And so we rely on the support of individuals like you who listen to the podcast, um, download content resources to be part of the 24/7 marriage family. So take a look at because we're going to be starting a new campaign where you as an individual can give $24 a month to the work of 24/7 marriage. And that helps other couples bring healing, restoration, content resources. Other couples get to boot camps. You get to be a part and give back from what you are actually receiving as well. And most of you, you spend more money. every 2 days at Starbucks getting your tall frappuccino, extra
Venti,
whip, venti, whatever it
venti.
may be,
Yeah,
grande. I have no idea. I don't like Starbucks. Oops, sorry. And so, like, you'll be hearing more about that, so we'll share more about that. But in the meantime, always remember that in marriage, you don't have to.
you get
Have an
to.
incredible week. Talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to the 24/7 Marriage Podcast. Help us expand our reach by rating and leaving us a review on iTunes. Make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. For more information on the work we do and how to support the 24/7 Marriage, head on over to 247marriage.org and click on Partner with Us. Until next week, remember, in marriage you don't have to, you get to.